Welcome in, everyone. It's the lawyer you know here to give a recap on the Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito situation. More news has come out from the Denver FBI. Confirmed, which is weird that it came from the Denver FBI, but they've confirmed that the human remains that were found next to the belongings that were believed to be associated with Brian Laundrie are in fact confirmed to be Brian Laundrie. And the way they confirmed that was from dental records from a human skull that was found, which is why it wasn't immediately apparent that it was Brian Laundrie. Hey, Beck. That's why it was not immediately noticeable that it was Brian Laundrie, because his body was found in an area that had been covered with water. We're going to talk about in this video how it's possible that law enforcement had all this manpower and resources and money looking for this body and they weren't able to find it. But it seems after a brief search, his parents show up and they find it. Yeah, Susie, they're the lead investigators here in Florida. Yeah, it's just is always interesting to me that Denver would take the lead on something in Florida, not Florida. Their jurisdictional rules are always interesting to me. Hello, Alana. Good morning. Good evening here. Ezekiel, hello from Florida. So what we're going to talk about on today's chat here is why it took so long for the FBI and law enforcement to find it and why his parents were able to find it so quickly, what this means for the case. And then we're also at the end going to talk about the doctrine of abatement because not my name. That's a great one. Florida doesn't even trust Florida. Yeah, please, everybody hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're here to break down legal cases. I don't think there's going to be much more on this Gabby Petito case, but there may. We're going to talk about why there may be at the end. CB, hey, from Canada. There is a lot of ambiguity, but we are going to talk about what could potentially happen in the future. But I also want to get your thoughts on the abatement doctrine. I'm going to explain what it is. We've actually done it in some cases. Law review articles. Law Review is a journal that's published in law school that some of the smartest of the smart, top of the class, get to join or ask to join or try out for. And they write these heady articles where they do tons of research. And those articles are actually used sometimes in court. And I've read a couple of articles in the past on abatement, and law students make some strong arguments against the doctrine of abatement. And I have a feeling that some people in this chat are going to agree with them and argue against the doctrine of abatement. We'll talk about the pros and cons. We'll talk about that kind of at the end. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about what's happened with Brian Laundrie. We know they found human remains. They were so vague, we didn't know whether it was just DNA. I guessed maybe it was some blood splatter until we found out it was a portion of or an area that was underwater. Then obviously probably not blood splatter. Maybe parts of a body. We weren't really sure. And we're still not sure. We know there was a human skull because they tested the dental records. That's how they found out it was Brian Laundrie. So I also guessed, and again, I'm not taking credit or pretending like I know what's going to happen. It's just based off things that have happened in other cases. I also guessed that if it was Brian Laundrie, we would find out pretty quickly. And if you remember, it was a while from the time that they found Gabby Petito or that body to where they confirmed anything, told us cause of death, anything like that. Here, it seems almost immediate. They found out it was Brian Laundrie as soon as they knew after the dental record test came back. They let us know in the media, this is Brian Laundrie. And I think there's some reasons for that. In my last video, a lot of you, the listeners and the chatters here on the Lawyer You Know page, you guys are a part of this page, and I'm giving you credit now. A lot of you were calling out law enforcement, saying, why did this take so long? Why is this so hard? Why did they need the Laundrie parents to find these articles of clothing or whatever they may be, items of interest of Brian Laundrie's? And I said, listen, it was underwater, it was hard, whatever it may be. But now a lot of people are calling out law enforcement for having just tons of time to search this area, knowing that this was an area Brian frequented, which his parents told them about. And yet, right when it opens up, the parents are able to find these items and find parts of a body. Now, I understand if they're underwater, I get it. You're not going to just see it. It's not going to be in plain view. But you can still search in the water, especially areas that are now covered with water. That doesn't mean they're 10 feet deep at the bottom of the ocean. That's not where his body was. So could have washed up. There are some things that can happen, but I think, I'm not one to criticize law enforcement usually, but I understand people's complaints at this point, why it's right where his parents said he would be basically, and it took them no time at all to find the body, yet law enforcement was there for so much time. And then they opened up the park. So they obviously didn't think his body was there. So that begs the question, were they listening to the media? Did they think the parents pointed them in the wrong direction? When in reality, it seems like all the hate coming down on Brian's parents. Now, listen, maybe they didn't tell the law enforcement everything, but it seems like they pointed them in the absolute right direction as to where Brian was. And I think that needs to go mentioned here, and it shouldn't go unnoticed that they did, in fact, point them in the right direction and ended up finding him and aiding in this discovery of his body, as opposed to pointing in one direction and knowing Brian's going in another direction. So give them a little bit of credit there, even though you can say whatever you want about how they handled the situation with their son. So I think it's also interesting to discuss how finding a body on a person of interest and a suspect in a certain federal crime, even if it's not a homicide, even if it's not a murder, because he was never actually charged with that. Instead, it was the credit card fraud stuff. So what happens to that case, and what happens to the murder investigation? Well, what happens to the murder investigation 99.9% of the time, actually, almost, I don't know of a case that it hasn't happened in. The murder investigation's over. They're not going to keep investigating and trying to prove that Brian caused this murder. That's why people are pounding the table and angry about justice not being served. Now, we talked last time about what's your definition of justice. If he was out in the wild alone and ended up dying from the surroundings, which we don't know his cause of death yet. So that's something still to be determined. I haven't seen it. If it comes out while I'm doing this video, you guys let me know in the chat. But is justice served now? The reason I would shrug my shoulders is there's been no proof that he committed murder. Innocent until proven guilty, I believe in that. Does it look good from his perspective? No. Do I think he could have done it? Sure. But it hasn't been proven, so it's hard for me to talk about justice in a situation like that. I will tell you it's not a great ending for Brian Laundrie. I think we can all agree with that. So the murder investigation is likely over. And what happens to the charges, the fraud charges, is abatement, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So when we get into what can we find out, is there anything else that's going to happen to help us with closure or anything like that? Some of the articles I've read and some of the reporting I've seen is that the notebook that they found multiple backpacks, some things were underwater, some things weren't, that there may have been a dry notebook. Again, the way this stuff is coming fast and furious, it's hard to confirm sources or confirm that it's true or find multiple sources saying the same thing. But assuming there is a dry notebook, that is something that could provide more information, could provide more facts, could provide some form of closure. We don't know what it said, and they don't have to share it with us as the public, but they likely would in a situation like this, even without a criminal investigation, even without a prosecution, without a conviction. They likely would share that information with us and let us know what they in fact found. So that's something that could happen in the future. Let me see here what else I have before we get to abatement. So let me know in the comments what you guys think as far as how law enforcement has handled this situation. Everybody looks at law enforcement a little bit differently, right? I look at them more as protect and serve, right? That's what we're told. So this kind of an investigation where they're searching for somebody is important, but as we see, they weren't able to prevent a crime in this case, and they're not going to get the opportunity to prove it. So a situation like this, when you look at how law enforcement handled it, do you think they did a good job or a bad job? And this is not a do you back the blue or anything like that. It's not a political statement. I just mean in this situation, right? And I think we should be educated, nuanced people to be able to discuss things in specific situations without it having to be over politicized or biased or anything like that. I just mean, how do you think they handled this situation? Do you think they did the best they could because the body was underwater and a lot of this stuff was underwater? Do you think they should have been able to find his body based on the fact that it wasn't at the bottom of the ocean it was, I don't want to say right in an area, but it seemed to be in an area where his parents said he frequented. So just let me know what you think about it, because I think they've come together and been pretty cohesive. I'm shocked at how well local law enforcement has worked with national FBI agents, right? That's not as easy as it may seem. So, that to me was a good look for law enforcement. The only thing that was really a bad look for them is that his parents were able to come and find the body like that and find the things like that. Some people said they planted the body. Seems pretty positive that they didn't, because of the condition of the body and the condition of most of the items. So maybe that dry notebook was something they planted. I don't know. People are accusing them of planting things. I have really seen nothing that the parents did that is showing criminal charges are coming for them. I've had a lot of questions about that. I really am not seeing that right now. It seems like they did tell them where they were. And once again, before it was confirmed that this was Brian Laundrie's body, the Laundrie family lawyer was texting media outlets saying, not confirmed it's his body, but they have a strong suspicion that it is. Again, I don't know what that does for his clients, but he was at it again, texting the media, keeping them up to date with all the things that are going on in the case. All right, let's talk about the doctrine of abatement. In the chat, I want you to let me know. I'm going to answer questions. I'm going to go through all the chat as I always do at the end of the video. But let me know what you think about this doctrine, if you agree with it, disagree with it, or if you think there's a better way. We give scholarships out to law students, and we tell them a lot of times, if you could write any law, what would it be? And they write a law, or they rewrite a law, something they think would help society or just be better in general. So let me know if you can think of a way that would be better than abatement. So abatement is basically, if you have criminal charges against you or even convictions, you can file a motion for abatement of those charges, which basically mean they go away. So if Brian Laundrie's if he had an attorney, or the family attorney could file for abatement for those fraud charges, and they would go away. And honestly, that's probably what's going to happen. And the reason for this is obvious, and we talked about it before. It's kind of a waste of law enforcement time and resources and taxpayer dollars to try to convict somebody that's deceased. Now, there are some cases that are more nuanced that make it more interesting, like Aaron Hernandez, because there was some clause in his contract about what his beneficiaries could collect if he wasn't convicted of a crime. So he was convicted of a crime, but if they're able to abate it, it goes away, and then potentially they could collect on that. And that's kind of a loophole that abatement can be used when someone is deceased after being convicted of a crime. We have had cases where clients have died, and even we had one sad situation where a client committed suicide in the middle of the process, or before trial or during trial. Things happen, and we file the motion for abatement of those charges. So it is a legal process that happens. People have issues saying they don't get closure, they don't get justice because of this abatement process. But is there a better way? Some of the law review articles had some things and problems that they had. So let me know what you think about it and what you think about abatement. Is it fair? And even if none of us think it's fair, is there a better way? Or do you think it is worth taxpayer dollars and law enforcement time and resources? Something we've talked about a lot in this case is why so much attention was put on this, because of the media, because she was a YouTuber, whatever it may be. A lot of time and resources and dollars were spent on this investigation, on this search, on this case. And tons of people go missing every day. So don't you think future taxpayer dollars and law enforcement resources should go towards finding them and proving those cases where there may be actually justice to be had, as opposed to applying it to someone who's deceased, no matter how angry or up in arms we are about it as a society or as a public or as a nation? Don't you think the dollars are better spent there? That's the theory. That's the doctrine. But I want to know what you all think about it. That's why we're here. That's why we're here talking about it. So if you haven't subscribed to our page already, take a second to do that. Like this video. If you're here and you enjoy this content and you enjoy the back and forth, let's get to some of the comments here. And we'll talk about a lot of things, I'm sure, as we always do, as I go through your comments. So, Shalon Flores, this is a common theme throughout a lot of the reporting. Is it suspicious that the parents decided to go search, then all of a sudden the body was found with his stuff? So there's two ways to look at it. Yes, it was suspicious. Why were they able to find him so fast? But on the other hand, if he was right where the parents told the FBI to look, but it was under a few feet of water and they didn't find him, is it that suspicious? And the human remains seem to indicate he was there for some time. Now, we're going to get some information, hopefully from a medical examiner or coroner at some point to tell us cause of death, when he died, like we got for Gabby Petito. That might give us more information. But right now, it is what it is. And we've got, everybody's going to have their opinion about it. Kara, does the investigation into what happened just stop now? Into what happened? Maybe not. They can still get a cause of death for Brian. And here's the other thing with the murder investigation for Gabby. If they have reason to believe somebody else did it, like there was some reporting that there were other dead bodies in that area. The other people hiking, I can't remember exactly. I think it was a couple that was killed. And if they connect it to that case, the investigation can still go on with the murder charges. But if they believe that it was Brian Laundrie, it's not likely to continue. That investigation is not likely to continue against the deceased defendant. Gregory, what's up from Toledo? Pete's artist who does some of our other videos. He does the Elizabeth Holmes videos from that area, went to Toledo. Glad you've been with us. You're an OG since the Ronnie O'Neill case. A coroner's inquest. I don't know what that means. If I said inquest, that was a misstatement. I don't know what that is. Hey, thanks, Susie. I think some other people are talking about it, so I don't want to take credit for scooping it or anything, but cool. Glad I'm the first to tell some of you guys. That's good. Good evening from England, BS Detector. Hi, Diana. So, Susie, I say Brian went out there ill-prepared to have to stay for any length of time, simply starved to death. That or he became too weak to move and the water rose and he drowned. We may never know, but I think it's more likely we do find out his cause of death. So we'll stay tuned for that. Rodney Williams, this is what I don't understand about this human remains. They didn't say a body. They said human remains, which is why I wasn't clear if they found a body at all. I don't know. I don't want to jump to the conclusion that he was decapitated, but it does seem they did find a human skull and were able to test the dental records, which is a very common way when you can't visibly attest to who the person is. Dental records is a common way. Yeah, there are some comments about whether or not it was a suicide. And again, that's something we might be able to find out. Again, if what Rodney's saying, like he was decapitated, maybe they can't find out cause of death. So we'll see. So Kara, yeah, confused. Bodies float usually. Sometimes they do something that they don't, depending on clothing, shoes, what's on them. So, I don't know. But I do find it unusual that the FBI couldn't find him because the area was just covered with water. Again, not the bottom of the ocean. So that is interesting to me. Apparently, a couple people have said this. The Laundrie's reported him missing much sooner and they didn't take action. And again, that's something they're going to have to answer for because they thought he was a suspect or because they thought the parents were lying. Did they not look in the places the parents were going? Did the media have something to do with that? By saying the Laundrie parents were lying for him or aiding and abetting. I mean, that's why we shouldn't jump to conclusions. And from the very beginning, most of us in here on this channel and in this chat weren't jumping to conclusions. Now, it's of course possible that they pointed them in the wrong direction, but that's why you don't want to assume you know the truth and then act on it because people's lives could be at risk. I did not cut my hair. It's just pulled back when I get home. Sometimes I do that. I'm playing with my kids and stuff. So sometimes I do that. I am at home. I am not at the office. It's about almost 7 o'clock my time. So Miss Mo, good question. He's dead. What more do people want? And that's, I think, a good question for us as a society. It's a young kid. He's dead now. I don't know what else people want. I don't want to say there's no proof he committed a crime. It has not been proven under the law that he murdered Gabby, yet people really are out for blood. And I think we need to just consider that and realize it's a sad end all the way around. He's not getting away with anything, so you can rest easy in that. But I don't know what people really want at this point. And yeah, not my name. People want blood. And it's just, CB, his parents did help law enforcement. Who knows what he told his parents about Gabby? Maybe nothing, and maybe he didn't tell them he planned to commit suicide. We don't know. That's the point. We don't know, but I think we know now. Maybe don't jump to conclusions. And I think it's a life lesson we can use in every case that we try to apply as lawyers. No matter what it looks like, don't jump to conclusions. Oh, interesting. So, Susie, the bag that was dry is a waterproof bag that had the notebook in it. Interesting. Okay. Which, again, people were saying dry bag. That's even more likely the parents planted it because his body was underwater. How would the bag be dry? Well, here's a theory. So BS detector. There were some items that were not in the water. How did they miss those? Look at all the money that has been spent. Exactly. And this is a thing that can go across the board. Like so many things are government, law enforcement that happen that is just such a waste of taxpayer dollars. I'm not going to call this a waste. 2 young lives were found, even though not in time. So that's tragic. But it was, anytime you can have an opportunity to save a life, it's worth taxpayer dollars. But again, maybe it was in a sealed bag, like Susie said, and it was underwater and then it wasn't. But it does seem weird that they found all this stuff right after they opened the park. You would think that they would keep the park closed if the water went down this much and search the areas that were previously underwater, right? I think that's reasonable, but what do I know? New Chris, super chat. They only found his head. It sounds like he died and then gators went to work on him. Also very possible, right? Anybody that's been in Florida knows about the gators, and not the ones in Gainesville that we don't like, but these gators we also don't like. So I guess it all makes sense. But yeah, that could be a reasonable explanation that the skull was just left because of the elements. And again, then we may never know the true cause of death. And I'm seeing some more reporting now that where he was found was less than 10 miles from his house, which to me indicates the parents were forthcoming. I mean, that's what it indicates to me. Thanks, New Chris, for the super chat question. And I think it's a good point and a good possibility that if he was in fact underwater, that's where the gators get him. And then that's also why it's less likely for them to find him if it's just a human skull versus the entire body. All right. Let me see if I can get back to where we were. So, CB, Gabby's death could have been accidental, not premeditated. It was indicated that it was a homicide. So, we'll see. New Chris, thanks again. Any questions that are in the super chat, they highlight and pop up, so they always get asked first. All right, so Bunny Bubs, it was a swamp. He was underwater, so were his belongings. And again, that's the leeway given to the law enforcement. So before what, I guess is a good question. You said that why weren't they out searching for him before? Let's see what else we got. So Igor, the process in a way encourages suspects to take their own life because they are guaranteed that the charges won't transfer to their families. Charges don't transfer to your families. I assume that you're talking about the Aaron Hernandez. If he has certain policies or payouts or contracts, theoretically that's a loophole. It's not what it's supposed to be there for. But I don't really know if I would say it encourages them to take their own life. Like we've had people that aren't even looking at life in prison that have taken their own life. And so, I mean, I don't really know. And that's the end result of a capital crime in Florida is the death penalty. So that is the penalty, is taking their life. So if they do it beforehand, before they're even convicted, I don't know that I would say abatement encourages it, because if you're dead, why do you care if the conviction's there? I guess unless it's the Aaron Hernandez situation. So, Joan, I think law enforcement did their best considering the extent of the environment. I think abatement is okay as it is. Okay. So, yeah. And again, under the circumstances, it was not easy, and they put a ton of time and resources. It's not like they did it halfway. You know, they did do everything they could to try to find him, I think. Oh, somebody else said he was 4 miles from his house. Common Sense Skeptic, founded because of E. Holmes. Happy to have you here. And a little newer, so that's good. So join the club here. We like to do these lives when stuff happens, when we can, when our schedule allows it, answer as many questions as we can. So Time Wanderer, experience in Florida, alligators, snakes, moccasins, anything could happen. Jeff Singer, right back at you, buddy. So some reports are saying skeletal remains, likely dead a long time ago. And I agree. The way that they described it and how they did the exam and used the dental records, it didn't seem like he died yesterday. It sounded like skeletal remains, but I didn't see that report exactly. So thank you, Kara. That's a good point. So the water was high. Cadaver dogs wouldn't be able to go into and sniff it out. And yeah, didn't think about the gators before, but you're right, Dame. Alligators will get you. So, Time Wander, when you run away, it's an admission of guilt, right? Legally, no, it is actually not. But if somebody absconds and leaves, which my dad actually told a story back in the day, how he had, there was 3 criminal defendants and 3 different lawyers, one representing each one of them, and they all left. They all fled. It was a big drug case. And the prosecutors continued to try the case with 3 empty chairs and convicted all 3 of them. So, even though it's not legally guilty if you run, you can still be prosecuted and convicted. And then if you ever show up, boom, you're back. Yeah, I am Ezekiel. It's apparent that the public found him guilty immediately, bothersome to me, as the law of the land is the opposite. I agree. I just think, I hope we learn as a society not to just jump to conclusions. I'm not saying he didn't do it, but Richie, long-haired lawyer. All right. It's like a brotherhood, you know, like the Jeep brotherhood, long-haired lawyer brotherhood. Same bun. I like it. And Keisha the media taints a lot of cases. Yeah, we all like to think we're helping and it's all good coming from the media and from the public. A lot of times it's not. And that's why lawyers and law enforcement have to be careful what they share with the media and how much they're influenced by the media. Yeah, Rory. Well, a lot of people missing resources should be afforded to all. Sometimes it's an impossibility to afford resources to all. But I agree. If you're not going to be able to prove this case, get justice, as people are saying, or get a conviction, I think you should try to help somebody that you still can. $4 miles to be exact. Suicide by gator. I don't know if anybody would choose that, but I guess theoretically you could say something like that. Suicide by cop. We've had that in a case. So Cam or CA McLennan, do you think it'll make it harder for Gabby's parents to recover? So obviously none of us can know that, but judging from some wrongful death cases and victims and criminal cases that we've represented, it's very difficult to recover ever. But when they do seem to get their day in court and see that a jury agrees with them and believes in them and believes that what they're saying is the truth and gets that conviction, that usually helps the recovery process. But again, it's an impossible thing to recover from. Rory Hearn didn't cut it. It's just pulled back a little bit. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know how to do this. So this is interesting, Tara. Does a swamp dry out that much in a short period of time? It can. In Florida, like in my yard, sometimes looks like a swamp, and then it just bone dry in a day or two because it can get hot here and really suck it up. It all just depends. Yeah, and Dane was saying it can dry up fast. Rory, I don't think his parents are going to be charged with anything, but we'll see. Don't the jurors have to agree with what? I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Yeah, it's not confirmed as a suicide as of yet, as Nada said. So, Alana, no, abatement is not just for appeals. If you die with an active criminal charge against you, you can get that charge abated. If you die with a conviction for some reason and you want to get it abated, you can get it abated. So Shelby Downer, absolutely, you can argue it's premeditated. Absolutely, strangulation. Now, I don't know if it is, if it was, or if they're going to prove that or anything, but I think you could absolutely prove that. Yeah, CM Nelson, it would be really dumb if they told them all the wrong trails, right? Because it was reported a while ago that the Laundrie parents told law enforcement what trails he frequented, which reserve he was in, which is where he was found. And so if they told them all these trails over here on the right and then they went left and found him, that would be obvious. I don't think that's what happened. Cassandra, we don't know if it was intentional or not yet. Nah, Scott P., those kind of comments don't get put up here. So, Tara, theoretically, I would think they could tell. I mean, I don't know if they would know that it was a gator, but they could say an animal got to him. I don't know if that's something they'll necessarily report. So, JJ51, people saying they let the parents touch the bag. Why would they do that? Because now their DNA would be on it. Yeah, I don't know why they would do it. I mean, theoretically, their DNA could be on it because they know they were with him prior to him leaving and going out there. I don't know why they'd let them touch it because then there are issues with, did they put something there in it? Did they plant it? Whatever. So I would, if I was the parents, I would not have wanted to touch it, especially seeing how all the people are at their house and bothering them at the grocery store and all this. I mean, that stuff is nonsense in my opinion. But yeah, I wouldn't have touched it if I was them. All right, let's see what else we got. So June asked you, this is a great question. This goes back to law enforcement. Why were his parents allowed to be around the evidence, let alone touch it? They're the ones who found it. The park was back open to the public. You or I could have found the evidence and accidentally touched it or grabbed it and been like, what's this? It was back open. They were allowed to be there just like anybody else. And they went down the tracks they told the FBI he was at. Apparently that's how it happened. And then they found it because the FBI couldn't. Can they determine cause of death with the partial remains? I guess it depends on the remains they have. Exactly. Answered your own question. It's good. See, starting to answer our own questions. So I did a plea hearing on the Parkland shooter who pled guilty to 34 counts. It was such an interesting plea hearing, and it explained everything that I wish every judge would do in every case. Sometimes when they're not as high profile, the judge doesn't go as into depth on it, but this judge did. The lawyers explained everything. The defendant, took responsibility, made a statement to the victims. So if you have interest in, the legal process, that was a really good video to see what a plea hearing is all about in the most serious of cases, why they do what they do and how it protects from future appeals. This just reminded me of it because you answered your own question, which a lot of people will be able to do. When you sit around and talk about legal stuff with a lawyer, you learn a lot and you get to have a lot of discussion in our channel, which is what makes it so fun, which is why you need to subscribe. So again, this is why some of this stuff is vague and secondhand. They touch the evidence bag versus his actual bag. I don't know what is true as far as it goes with that. Becky, it's not a haircut. It's just Shelby. Again, the whole public was going around without a police escort. And Greeny, I don't think they tampered with the evidence. There's been no evidence to support that. And again, new Chris, plot twist, what if somebody killed him, right? So I'm not going to say that happened. I don't think there's any indication of that right now. But with how everybody's been treating his parents and how he's been portrayed in the news, we've seen people with much less hatred towards them get murdered. So I don't think that happened, and it would be a plot twist. So Susie, another people saying Chris picked up the bag, claimed he had a camera guy. So the lawyer for the Laundrie family has said, law enforcement, media, everybody was around when they found this evidence. There's no way they could have planted it. So I don't think he would say that if it wasn't true, or if he couldn't at least prove it. Southern Sass, still some fishy stuff with the entire case. Yeah, Windy Wednesday. Just checking in. I've avoided this case because how vicious and crazy people get over it. I agree. And we're trying to keep it good here, just discussing what we know and, what we think and how it works. We discuss abatement, what happens when somebody dies with an active criminal investigation. It's kind of the angle we're taking here. And again, don't jump to conclusions. That's something we always advise. Rory Hearn, lighthearted, off topic. Kim Kardashian getting a law degree. I don't know if it's actually ever going to happen, but she got headlines with it. That's what she's looking for, right? Scott P., this show makes me want to put my law degree to use, practice as CPA instead. So many people with law degrees do other things. That's why I say it's the best degree you can get, because it makes you that much better of a CPA. It makes somebody that's, on a board of directors that much better, or even in banking, just about anything, people in real estate. It can really be a great crossover for everything. But come on, you always got to have a little itch to practice law, get in the game, get inside the ropes, as they say. I encourage it. Some people say, oh, why would you ever want to be a lawyer? I encourage it. I love it. I think it's so much fun. All right. So Desi, where's the body? It was just a few miles from the Laundrie family home is where they found it. All right. We've got about 5 more minutes here before we sign off. So if you have any other questions, throw them in the comments now. Thanks for joining us for the live. We jumped on as soon as we found it, like we often do, when time allows. Thank you, everybody, for coming in here. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you hit the like button on this video. If you like this content, we'll keep doing follow-ups if we find the cause of death. But for this video, I'm going to look here one more time, see if there's any new questions. I think that's it. That's all we got. You guys are awesome. Thanks for getting in the chat. Thanks for asking questions. Also, as always, you make the show fun. But for now, that's all we got. Until next time.